What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Botania. Today, guys, we are going to be setting up an automated tree farm. Now, this is going to be one of the tree farm setups that is purposefully made for early game. There's a lot of more effective tree farm setups that are not made for early game, and we'll get to those a little bit later, but this one is specifically going to be for when you're just starting out and you want to get a little bit of stuff going into your endoflames automatically. You don't want to have to constantly mine coal, all that stuff, to kind of refill it and get mana. So just keep in mind that there are more effective ways to set this up if you are further through the Botania mod. So we're going to be setting it up pretty much right over here. This isn't an ideal space to actually be setting it up in, considering I have a wall right there and right there, but eventually if I really need to, I can kind of cut down this wall more than I already have. But the tree is going to be planted pretty much right here. So if you want to take a look at this shape, this is how we're going to be setting it up. So you pretty much are just going to go 3 in this direction. It's pretty funny because I remembered it because I was like 3, then 3, 3, and then over another 3. But you can just pause the video and look at this actual setup. But the tree is going to be planted right here. So you're going to want to make sure that if you are setting it up with a bunch of walls around it, that at least this block right here is far enough away that a tree will be able to grow. And it's actually going to grow pretty slow with all the stuff that we have around it. But if you make it too close to a wall, like if I were to put it in this corner right over here, it actually wouldn't be able to grow at all. So just one thing to keep in mind while we're actually setting this up. So the next thing we're going to be going over is all the different items that we need. Now there's a lot of stuff that we need for today, and the main reason is because some of the plants that we are going to be making require higher tier runes. So we're going to be making, I guess we can start with the Hopper Hawk, since we made that last episode, so it's not actually super difficult to make. We need a Rune of Air and then 2 gray petals, 2 light gray petals, and a redstone root. So we got the redstone root right here. We have a Rune of Air, which I believe was left over, and then we've got the 2 gray petals and the 2 light gray petals. So we just need to bucket this out. And actually, wait, I'm messing this up right now. We're gonna be, yeah. So we gotta bucket it out, and I think I have seeds on me, right? Yeah. So we have seeds on 2, and for some reason my hotbar is like super full right now. Okay, so this is full. Let's toss all of this stuff in here. Petals. There we go. And there we go. So we have our Hopper Hawk. Now, one thing that I want to go over today is we don't actually need to make floating plants for certain ones of these, like the Hopper Hawk, but I'm going to be making all the plants that we use in today's build floating because they actually look a lot cooler. And I just want to tell you guys how you can actually make them because it's a little bit confusing. Now, if we look in here, you can see that there is a floating Hopper Hawk. There's also the floating petite Hopper Hawk, which we really don't need to worry about right now. That actually would be kind of nice for certain things. It has like a smaller range, but we're going to be dealing with this one right here. And if you click on it, it doesn't pop anything up. Well, the way you actually make these is going to involve taking some glowstone dust, going to be taking a pasture seed, and we're going to be taking some dirt. Now, the way you do this is, we actually need one more thing too. We need a mystical flower. It can be any color. I'm using white, but you take the mystical flower, you put some glowstone in to get a glimmering white flower, and then you pull that out, and then you put that in with a pasture seed and dirt, and that's going to get you a floating white flower. Then all you have to do with that is take any floating flower, any color you want, and you combine it with functional flora, and it will give you a floating version of that functional flora. So boom, there we have it, a floating Hopper Hawk, and that one is now ready to go. So that's something that I just thought would be a fun little thing to cover. Some of these we are going to be having floating because there is relevant stuff pertaining to that, like when we use our munch dew, we're going to have it floating because we only wanted to eat certain leaves on the tree. But aside from that, some of these plants do not need to be floating. If for some reason you have a lack of glowstone dust to use, the Hopper Hawk does not need to be floating. Now, the next thing that we're going to make is going to be a munch dew, the one that I just talked about. This is pretty much going to just eat leaves off the trees and give us mana for it. Now, the petals are really easy to make for this one. Doesn't even require a redstone root, but it requires a Rune of Gluttony, which requires a Rune of Fire and a Rune of Winter and 2 mana diamonds. So this is where it gets a little expensive. This one requires a Rune of Water and a Rune of Earth, and then it requires a cake, which was really annoying to make, some wool and some snow, which again was slightly annoying to get. And then we're going to need to make a Rune of Earth. We've already got the Rune of Water, and the Rune of Earth, we're going to get 2, and that's good because we're going to need 2 today. It requires the mana powder, mana steel, stone, a block of coal, and a mushroom. So that should be right over here. So block of coal, mushroom, stone, we've got the mana powder, and we've got the mana steel. Now all this stuff should be going on my hotbar, because that is going to be put straight into the altar. So let's throw it down right over here, and we'll let it fill up with mana. And we'll get our wand out and all that good stuff. Now, the reason that this is so great is because we actually are going to be using up all these runes, and a lot of the runes that we made last episode we're going to be using. So it was actually suggested that I could just right-click on it with that, and then right-click on it with the wand. Again, very loud, I know, but last time I was throwing the living rock on there. So it really makes no difference if you want to throw the living rock onto the altar or right-click it on there. You can do both. But now we've got the Rune of Earth, so to make this, we go back through Rune of Gluttony. We've got the Rune of Fire. Then we go to the Rune of Winter, and we need the Rune of Water, the Wool, the Snow, all this good stuff right here, and our Rune of Water, and then we'll grab out the Rune of Fire, because this requires that, requires the 2 mana diamonds, and lastly, I believe it's the lime petal, the green petal, and the mystical red petals, if I'm correct. And we need to do this one in the runic altar again. Okay, so, oh, we need to do all these in the runic altar again. So this one needs to be done in the runic altar first. So I'm spacing out right now on all this stuff we have to do. I keep forgetting this is a tier 3 rune. Okay, so we use these 2 on here, and then we require, this one should be the cake, the wool, and the snow. Wool, snow, and cake. Okay, so that one will start. Thankfully, we have a significant chunk of mana in this mana pool right here. Yeah, I was pretty much full. So we'll let that go, and I hope I have enough living rock. I don't know if I have any left over in here, but we may actually need to set up the pure daisies again and get them going. I have one right here, and I don't think we're going to run out, but we can right-click with that, turn it into functional mode. We get all these back, which is actually really nice, so we're not even going to be using these up completely, but we get all those back, our Rune of Earth, and we've got now our Rune of Winter, which is going to be combined with this, and the Rune of Fire again over here to make the Rune of Gluttony. And let's do that. So there we go. There we go. The mana diamonds. We'll get the Rune of Gluttony. And we've got our last living rock. I really hope we don't need any more. I don't think we will. If we go and look at the Ranuncarpus, I hate the name of this thing. It requires a Rune of Earth, which we already have. So we can wait for this. Now, I guess we can talk about the Ranuncarpus a little bit. This is going to be the next one that we make. This is going to allow us to place our saplings that are dropped. So that's really the only purpose it serves for this. That one, you can have it floating or sitting on the ground. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to be covering how to make it with a floating one. Get all of our runes back. Okay, so I actually need to go back to get the munch dew, because I don't remember that's all we need, right? Yep. Okay, so I was right with the petals too. Okay, so let's get our bucket out. We'll fill this back up. I really need to automate this. And we've got our petals on those, our red petals, and lastly, our Rune of Gluttony. And let's get out our seeds. Wait, did I set this up incorrect? Okay, no, I didn't. Okay, so we have that. And we're going to come in again, and I'm actually going to make multiple this time because we already made one. I'm going to make 2. We're going to do the glimmering flowers, and I didn't grab out the pasture seeds. Okay, so there we go. We got the pasture seeds, the glimmering flowers. So we got the floating flowers. We'll get our floating munch dew. So we now have that. And this one will be saved for the Ranuncarpus, which we are going to make now. So like I said, the Ranuncarpus is going to allow us to actually place our tree saplings automatically. So this is going to require 2 orange, a yellow, an earth rune, and so we'll get the earth rune. Click all these back in there. 2 orange, a yellow, a redstone root, and that should actually be it. So we'll refill this with some water, and we will get all of these placed in there. So toss that in, toss those, those, and there we go. Okay, so now we're going to make this into another floating flower, which will go right there. But like I said, you don't need to actually have that floating if you don't want it, if you're low on glowstone, anything along those lines. Okay, so the next thing that we need to make is going to be another pulse mana spreader, which is what we have the stuff for right here, which is pretty easy to craft. We'll just make it like so. Gold ingot, any petal, mana spreader, redstone, pulse mana spreader. That one's good to go. Over here, we're going to be making a mana lens, and we are going to be doing the boar lens. So this one requires a piston, 2 lapis, redstone, and then the stuff for an actual mana lens, which is right here. Now, one thing I want to address is later on when we actually go and make the more effective tree farm, typically you use a warp boar lens, and the reason we can't do that right now is because we don't actually have the stuff to make it. So that's pretty much going to be the prerequisite to making a better tree farm, is going to be able to make that boar warp lens, warp boar lens. There's actually a difference, but aside from that, that's really all that's the big difference between this, and that allows you to have multiple trees set up to the same pulse mana spreader, and it makes it a lot easier to do, all that good stuff. But the next thing we're going to be setting up is an hourglass. We're actually going to be setting up 2 hourglasses, so let's set this up. I believe it's like so. Spread this out over here, mana steel in the center. Why did I put it there? And redstone. So there we go. We got the hovering hourglasses in our inventory. I collected some soul sand to use for these, and the last few things that we're going to need are just random things. You're going to need 2 comparators, a sticky piston, a mana pool, a redstone torch. You could use an item frame along with some oak wood. I'm actually going to need to make a chest, since I don't think I haven't already. And I do have some stuff up here that we'll be using. That is going to be for actually dropping saplings, but that's not in the actual tree farm setup. It's really your choice as to how you want to do that. And I'm just going to grab this out of here to make a chest. I'm running a little low on resources, but I think we should be fine. So now it's time finally to set this up. I know we've been doing a lot of work, and the reason that this setup is going to be a little bit awkward is just because I don't want to have to worry about that hopper picking these up, and it's a little bit easier. I know I can, whitelist and blacklist things for those hoppers, but the line that is drawn right here by the Petal Apothecary and this Living Rock Brick is the line that those will pick up. So anything that drops on these will not be picked up. I'm pretty sure that some things will be picked up by that I don't want to though, and I will have to eventually whitelist it. But for now, that is not going to be an issue. I'm also noticing right now that no hostile guys are spawning around us. So let's take a look. Yeah, we're in hard difficulty, which strikes me as odd. I'm pretty sure it's the render distance bug, which I really hate. But I'll up the render distance eventually. The only problem is I have a pretty bad CPU on my computer right now, so it actually causes me to lag a little bit once we get further into mods, but we'll worry about that later. The whole point is making a tree farm today. I just didn't want you guys to think I was in peaceful, because nothing is spawning around here. But time to set this up. So the first thing that we are going to be using is the sticky piston. It is going to go right here, and we are going to take a dirt block and place it right there. Now you can place any block attached to the front of this. That is going to be the block that you want things to be planted on, but keep in mind it should be different than normal grass. And the reason behind that is because when you use a random carpus, the block that it is going to plant your saplings on is determined by the block that it is floating on. So when you plant this, we're going to put it over dirt, or if you want to use any of the Botania grass that's different than normal grass, you can do that, but we want it to be distinguished from this regular grass so that it does not plant on all this grass in its radius. So we're going to be using only dirt, and we're just going to make sure that there is no dirt that's just randomly close enough that it'll happen. But the ideal situation would be to use some sort of Botania, like soil or grass that's a little bit different. But the next thing that we're going to be setting up is taking any block. I'm going to use the Living Rock Brick, and we're going to put it right above this, like that. So there we go. And the next thing we're going to do is we can put down a redstone torch back here, which is going to extend the piston. Actually, you know what? We probably don't want to do that first. What we need to do first is put down the pulse mana spreader. So this one is going to go, the reason we're going to do this first is because it's going to go right down there, and you want it aiming up. The idea is that when this pulses, this is going to be pulled back, and the pulse is going to shoot up here, and it's going to allow us to break the tree, which is why we're going to be throwing the boar lens on the front of that. So basically, the lens is going to change what happens to the mana that flies through it. There's a ton of different lenses, but for today, that's the one we're going to use. And then we're going to throw down one hovering hourglass right over here next to it. We're not going to put anything in it yet, but the next thing that we're going to do is bring some redstone up here. So redstone's going to come up here like so, and now the comparators come into play. So we're going to throw them down like this, and essentially what this is going to do is imagine this dirt right here is extended, and I guess I can finish this off. We're going to put redstone here, and then we're just going to run it up over, and we're going to put a torch right here. So now we can do the hypothetical situation. Essentially what this is going to do, it's kind of like, it makes like a lock for a little bit, but when this flips, this will be retracted, and then the pulse will shoot out, and the whole idea is, if this retracts for just really quick, just like a snap retract and then push out again because of a pulse from this, the problem is going to be that it will still get hit by the pulse of mana that's going to be boring the tree. So the whole purpose is it needs to be held back for a little bit longer so that the whole pulse can go up before this extends back out. So by setting this up, it allows it to be retracted, held there for a second, and then pushed back out, back to its position, and then that is when all of the saplings and all that will be replanted. It'll reset and it will go again. So what we can do now is start setting up a couple of the different plants that we want. Now all these don't really have a specific way to be set up, but we want to keep track of the mana spreader and the mana pool that we're going to place down. So I guess I should use a little bit of dirt, and we're going to go 7 blocks up from this dirt right here. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th block is the mana pool. And the reason behind this is because that'll allow the trees that we want to grow, and it'll also collect the mana that is shot up there by the pulse mana spreader, so it's not just flying off and getting wasted. So now that we have that, we can set up the plants, and the reason I wanted to set that up first is because a couple of these plants, specifically the munchdew, need to be at a certain distance to, I guess they need to be close to the mana spreader and to the mana pool. So the whole idea is we're going to want to allow a tree to grow here, but we're also going to want to allow the munchdew to eat the leaves. So we're going to come out 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, and we're going to place down the floating munchdew. Now it's going to eat a couple random leaves that are up here and around just because it's not in its own open area, but I'm curious actually if it's filling up this mana pool right now. Okay, so it's bound to that mana spreader down there, which is shooting up to this mana pool right here. So that's what we wanted to make sure could actually happen. The whole idea is that we need this to be able to reach that mana pool. If you were to go up 1 higher, it actually would not be able to reach the mana pool. And the reason that we need this munchdew to be floating is because we don't want all the leaves of the tree to be eaten. We only want some of them to, so we want this to collect enough mana that it can allow the pulse mana spreader to shoot stuff out. But on top of that, we want it to leave enough leaves that we can actually get some saplings back. So the next thing we're going to do is set up our hopper hawk to collect things, and this one can really go anywhere. I guess I might just set it up right over here. I guess, yeah, we'll try and keep track of space. So we can set up the floating hopper hawk over here, and we'll set up a chest next to it. And the way we'll deal with this is we'll take an item frame, and we're essentially going to whitelist only wood, so we'll put the item frame there. We'll put the wood right there in the item frame, and now, because if we look at the settings on this, it's pick up only items in frames. This hopper hawk is only going to pick up items that are in this frame, so pretty much it's only going to pick up wood. Now the next thing we need to do is set up our floating wren and carpus, which is going to be the thing that we'll replant in here. And the way we're going to set this up is we can set it up, I guess, we can set it up like right here. This should be a perfectly fine spot. So we're going to place down some dirt. We'll place down our floating wren and carpus. And now this one is going to be bound to a dirt block, which is what it's going to plant on from now on. And the only one in its radius should be this right here, unless there's like a random cave in here somewhere. But if you decide you don't want the floating wren and carpus, and you want just a regular one, then the block that is that would be right here, that's placed right on top of, is not the block that it would be registering. It would be the one below that. So whatever is below this dirt right here that is planted on would be the one it's taking into account. But because it's floating, it takes the block right below it into account, which is this dirt one. I know it's a little bit complicated, but just imagine right now if this was the dirt block right here, if it was a straight plant planted on dirt, then it would take this bottom block. If it was a floating one, it would take this block. So something to keep in mind. It makes it a little bit easier if you use a floating plant. But there we go. And now everything should be good. We can actually set up the tree in here and verify that this whole thing works once we set up our hovering hourglass. Now we're going to set this with 15 soul sand in here. just because it's going to take a while for this tree to grow. Anywhere between 10 and 20 will be perfectly acceptable. The main thing to keep in mind is just how close everything is to this. And the reason I say that is because when you have a lot of stuff around the trees, it's going to have a little bit of difficulty growing. And having like this block right here and all this stuff around here is going to cause a little bit of an issue. But just to make sure that we actually can grow it, we're going to throw some bone meal on this and just verify that everything's okay. And then the problem becomes that we still would have to wait 15 minutes for the hovering hourglass to go. So what I might actually do is just wait until it's about to go and have everything else set up first and verify that it can replant. So I will be right back. Okay guys, so we are back. Now I've been doing a little bit of work off camera, and the tree has grown. It worked perfectly. Everything should be set up correctly. I did shift some things around a little bit, and there are a couple things I want to talk about, and hopefully we will be able to see this tree get broken during this process. But really the big thing to talk about right now has just been what I have set up recently, and there is one last thing that I actually need to do, which is throw an item frame down on this. So let me throw down an item frame to make sure that we are not picking up. Actually, you know what? I think that one should suffice, but we're going to throw down an item frame on here, and we're going to make sure that this one is saplings, because this is the inventory that it is going to from this hopper hawk. But I know it's a little bit hard to see, but this is the area we're going to be discussing for the dropping mechanism. Now, the reason that this is important is because this sapling right here is what's going to be planted by the Randoncarpus when this tree ends up getting broken, and this is where the saplings are all going to go. So this hopper hawk will pick up the saplings, it will put them into this hopper right here. Now this hopper has a redstone signal whenever there is one that is currently dropped, meaning that the items will get stuck in there, and then the minute that one is not there, it will be dropped down through this open crate. Now the reason that this will work is because right now this hopper hawk is receiving a redstone signal from this torch over here, and what is right behind this block, it's hard to see, well you actually can't see it, is the floating hourglass that we had. Now this has 4 soul sand in it, and the reason that I didn't use 5 soul sand is because this will prevent items from despawning. So any item essentially after it goes through one cycle will only be on the ground for 4 minutes. So this item right here will get picked back up, put back into this open crate, and then fall out again. And what that also means is that any saplings that get dropped by this will immediately get picked back up. Now if you really don't care about this sapling, or you know, whatever, you can set the timer longer so that it only goes off whenever this tree ends up getting picked up, so you can synchronize them for, you know, 15 minutes. But the only reason that I don't think that's smart is because the saplings are not immediately going to come up, so you kind of got to come up with your own timer. I think 4 minutes is a good one. It'll prevent this from repeatedly firing over and over and over again. But the whole idea is that the minute the pulse comes through, this redstone signal turns off. This will get to pick up stuff for 1 split second, and then it'll stop again, and the whole cycle will go through one more time. Now the one thing that I want to see right now when we come over here is how long we have left on the timer. So there actually is not that long left on the timer. The only problem is that's 15 minutes right there. So it all comes down to, you know, what percentage of 15 minutes that is. Now I could have always set it for a little bit like less time, but I actually wanted to see how long it is. You're not going to get a ton of wood from this. That's the big thing. You could set up a bunch of these. It is kind of expensive to set them up, but if you had a bigger area, you could set up a couple more of these in one area. But for now, because I'm kind of restricted and you can see it's already interfering with this setup, we're not going to try and make it any bigger, but eventually we will get a much bigger tree farm setup. But right now the whole idea is that if I AFK in this world, then I can just eventually hook this up to our setup with the endoflames, and whether I want to make charcoal or just use regular wood, I will be able to put something in there that is burnable and start getting mana from it. And then it'll just turn into what I did during our IC2 world, where I pretty much just sit there and AFK and do nothing for a very long time and allow it to build up, so then the next episode is a little bit easier. Okay guys, so we are back now. Unfortunately I wasn't able to catch it on camera, but everything did go according to plan. The only thing that was an issue was things actually being picked up right here by this hopper hawk, and it turns out that I forgot when you set this up, if you want to use this same setup, you actually need redstone right here, and this needs to be moved up one. You can't have it down where this block is. That was the big issue though. Everything else worked perfectly. The munch dew ended up eating enough. We got saplings back. Everything is good to go. And aside from that, all you have to do is if you want to pick up apples at some point to use them as food, you can set something up to do that. If you don't really care, then you could just let them despawn. But aside from that, everything should be okay. Now, the only reason that I believe we're having a slight issue with this being replanted is because we had a slight issue with the saplings actually coming out. But I believe we should be able to move this over to a different area if we wanted to move it over here and have no issue. So we can do that and see if it makes any difference. So let's get this out here and let's move it over here to a little bit more of an open area, and we'll see if that works any better. So we'll do that. The main idea is there we go. Okay, so we were able to move it over to a better area. It's a little bit of an awkward spot over there, not close enough. So just a little bit of shifting things around. This is the finalized setup right here. It should be all good to go. Timer is set on 15 minutes. Everything is good. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments, as I know this is a little bit of a confusing build if you're just starting out. But I wanted to say thank you guys for watching. Please feel free to give it a like if you found the video informative or entertaining in any way. And one heads up to you guys before we end the video for today is Thanksgiving break is coming up, and so are finals, so the videos might be kind of few and far between for the next couple of weeks. I apologize for that. I will try my best, but after that it will be Christmas break, and we'll be able to do like a video every single day for a month or more, which will hopefully make up for it, and we'll be able to catch up on some of these Surviving With series. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you later.